402, there's a 40-mile-an-hour pursuit. They're headed southbound, passing Reliance on 522. They're asking for stop sticks. Alright, they just pulled into Rural Farms. I'll advise for you.
Alright, I'll still respond.
It's going down. I'm your captain. It's going down. I'm your captain. It's going down. I'm your captain. It's going down. I'm your captain now. It's going down. 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 I'm your captain now. It's going down. It's going down. It's going down. It's going down. It's going down.
That was f***ing unjust and f***ing uncalled for. Jesus Christ. Oh, that's gonna be...
What you just saw there was a good cop disgusted with what he saw, which was an elderly man with dementia who was taken down by his colleagues after a brazen and dangerous 40-mile-per-hour pursuit to a gas station. That man would later die in the hospital 13 days later. Of course, police officers responsible should be held accountable, but it's happened before, it will happen again. Why? There are enablers among us, the Fourth Amendment FUDs. Let's take a look at what happened here, and then I'll explain.
402, there's a 40-mile-an-hour pursuit. They're headed southbound, passing Reliance on 522.
10-4 in or out.
Where's them clear? I'm being out.
Earlier this year, deputies with the Warren County Sheriff's Department in Virginia attempted a traffic stop on a 77-year-old man named Ralph Ennis, who was apparently suffering from dementia. He didn't stop, but instead drove to a gas station.
They want me to deploy stop sticks.
They're asking for stop sticks, southbound 522.
Alright, 10-4, I'm heading that way. Past all the bridges and the guard hill.
Alright, they just pulled into Rural Farms. I'll advise for you.
Alright, I'll still respond.
They'll be out with them at the 7-Eleven. Rural Farm.
An officer from a different agency, the Front Royal Police Department, captured what happened on his body cam.
Jesus Christ, man, just grab a hold of him. What are you...
Just prior to the violence, the video shows that all the man did was to get out of his car and walk towards the deputies with his keys in his hand. The footage shows a deputy slamming the elderly man's head against a truck while pinning his arms behind his back. A second deputy then tackles the man to the ground, hitting the man's head on the concrete. "Please let me up," the man cried out, with two officers on top of him. "Let me go." The Front Royal officer was clearly shaken by what he saw, and he said so while his body cam was still recording as he left the scene.
That was f***ing unjust and f***ing uncalled for. Jesus Christ. Oh, that's gonna be...
The elderly man was apparently then hospitalized with a brain bleed. He would never get out of the hospital. He died about 2 weeks later. Unbelievably, but not surprisingly, the government medical examiner ruled that the death was of natural causes. And I'm sure that has nothing to do with the fact that the man's son filed a lawsuit against the government. Let me repeat what I just said a few videos ago. There are two kinds of people in this world: those who support the "he deserved it" defense, and those who support the Constitution unconditionally. Those who are willing to allow police officers to bend the rules so long as the victim deserved it in their eyes haven't fully thought things through, though. Case in point, your usual Fourth Amendment FUD, who is the same guy who thinks that the Second Amendment protects his bolt-action 30-06, but not your AR-15, is okay with the police beating someone unnecessarily who chose to lead the cops on a pursuit. The same Fourth Amendment FUD who is okay allowing police officers the discretion to mete out their version of justice with no due process, however, is not okay with the cops beating his own elderly father with dementia who had no idea what was actually happening. If you allow one, you have chosen to allow the other. By definition, you either protect all constitutional rights or you protect none. We've created a society where the government sends an armed employee to deal with even non-violent interactions. Why is it that the DMV or postal employees can generally interact with the public and nobody gets hurt? Just like, why is it that UPS employees can manage to interact with dogs without shooting them? This is just one of the many recent incidents involving police officers and elderly people with dementia. Police officers have been enabled to fly off the handle at the slightest perceived threat to their authority. They've been enabled to fly off the handle on the basis of perceived threats to officers' safety. They have been authorized to act like robots, to attack at the slightest provocation, without compassion for those they've been entrusted to protect and serve. The law assumes that police officers will make mistakes, that they will have bad information or misunderstand the situation. The law judges them objectively, not based on what they actually thought or intended, but based on how a reasonable police officer would act in the same circumstances. Not that that should exonerate the officers here. The original suspected crime was a mere traffic violation of 8 miles per hour over the speed limit. Then that turned into a slow speed pursuit to a gas station. Okay, let's think about the so-called reasonable police officer. Looking at the totality of the circumstances here known to the officers, was it really necessary to gang tackle the guy? Oh my God. While a militarized pet cries and barks because she really wants to sink her teeth into this confused old man. Here's the problem. Most of us would look at those circumstances, including police officers, such as the guy who was wearing the body cam in this footage, and say, hell no. We're not robots. We are supposed to be able to adapt to deal with different types of people in different scenarios. What would happen if a confused old man walked into a bank holding his keys in his hand? Would he be immediately tackled and handcuffed by security? Or would any competent person recognize that they're dealing with an elderly man who might be confused? Does it ever cross the mind of a reasonable police officer that a vehicle may not be stopping because it's an elderly person who's confused or suffering from dementia? I would argue that a reasonable officer should be concerned first with protecting and serving an elderly man. As the U.S. population ages and more people develop dementia, older people are increasingly running into problems with police. But analysis of U.S. crime data by the Marshall Project showed that the number of arrests of people over age 65 grew by nearly 30% between 2000 and 2020. The number of elder arrests is growing more than the population is aging. 2010 to 2020, more than 12,000 people 65 and older ended up in a hospital emergency room for injuries caused by police or private security. Unfortunately, police officers are not taught to think about the citizen. They're taught to only think about officer safety, it seems. Citizen safety is last. That's our problem. But officer safety isn't mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. Where it exists is in police officer training. Police officers should be trained on how to help people. They are the ones that wanted to be in a public service job. That's what it's about. It's not about them being scared. If they're scared, go find another job. Freedom is scary. Deal with it. I realize I may have left out the point here. On this beautiful Christmas day, I would propose that police officers just follow the golden rule. To treat people like you, not just like you would want to be treated, but like you would want your own grandfather, your elderly grandmother to be treated. And for those of us, or those of you who may end up on a jury judging a police officer or a government employee for one of these interactions, don't just knee-jerk back the blue. Back the Constitution first. Again, freedom is scary. Deal with it. Merry Christmas.